All right, greetings. My name is Aaron. So I had an idea today, and it's kind of based on an idea that I got from a guitar teacher who I had. I took a lesson with. Recommended this book called The Advancing Guitarist, and in it, in the first pages, are a technique or philosophy of guitar that Mick Goodrick calls the science of the unitar, which is kind of abandoning your idea of the guitar as kind of an instrument that you can do, like go up and down the strings, kind of as guitarists are known and prone to do, and just using one string and going up and down the fretboard, um, uh, as opposed to going up and down the strings, up and down like this. So going using one string instead of using all of them. And the idea behind this idea is to get your ear used to hearing intervals, and kind of get yourself out of the trap that is guitar, which is learning a box or a lick in a box, kind of the pentatonic box, getting out of those type of boxes, and starting to hear melodies and be able to play them more fluently in your head. Because it's kind of easy when you are a guitarist to learn a box or a lick, and kind of get stuck, or a collection of licks, and kind of get stuck in those shapes and those movements. And you kind of have to remember, as a musician, first and foremost, it's your job to create enticing melodies, not necessarily to shred on the guitar. As much fun as shredding is, and as as guilty as I am of falling into that trap as well, um, the point is to create evocative melodies, um, and there's a point to be made that shredding is also evocative and has its place. But I think if you, especially if you kind of want to write songs, or even create more, um, I would say, emotionally dense melodies, um, you would be well founded. This would be a good idea to try something like this. So one thing that, um, the Mick Goodrick, uh, what's the word, recommends kind of soloing in this way, getting like a backing track and using one string to solo, and making use of different guitar techniques to to jazz up your solo, or to spice up your solo a little bit. So like harmonics, that was a bad harmonic, bends, slides, hammer-ons, and things like that, but um, only kind of restricting yourself to one string. So, and an idea that I had, which I think can also help you recognize when a melody is good, is to take a melody that you kind of already know is good because it stood the test of time, like a melody that I was just playing, that fits this category to me would be Mary Had a Little Lamb, or really any nursery rhyme. Take a good nursery rhyme, famous nursery rhyme, and learn it. And then begin to mess around with it. So you can, and this is kind of where improvisation comes in. You can mess around in any way you want, and start to, and try to hear what is going to happen when you mess around. So like, so those hammer-ons, those slides, you can kind of, it kind of makes the entrance into that note a little bit more dramatic. and you might not play it perfectly. That's a and not even necessarily perfectly. You might play unpleasing things, and that's kind of the point, is to recognize what is pleasing and and not pleasing. So there, I kind of did some rubato stuff, but not necessarily pleasing rubato. But I think rubato has its place. Certainly, you can kind of slow down, speed up. Pay attention to dynamics. Dynamics is a huge part, overlooked part of guitar playing and soloing. You know, especially when you're getting into big shreddy stuff, it can be really easy to kind of fall into the hard and fast, everything hard and fast. But there's a there's power in slowing down and playing more softly as well. So yeah, see some, like, you kind of attack notes, attack note some notes harder, some notes less hard, and you will start to get an idea of when that's and it's good to use a melody like this because you know it, and you can kind of already feel it, like a nursery rhyme that, like, maybe your parents sang to you or that you are familiar with from your childhood, or just a melody that you know that is simple, and you can kind of you can you can make use of its simplicity in a way that you can then expound upon or expand upon. So and you don't necessarily have to play the melody the same way. That's another thing about melodies, is they're certainly open to interpretation. I mean, as long as it's recognizable, you can even change some notes, and like that. That was kind of a little blue note. White as snow. And then singing also helps a lot too. So, like, Mary had a little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb, whose fleece was white as snow. Because then you can start to really get the sound of the melody in your head, and being able to sing your melodies is almost important, because that's really what all instruments are trying to emulate as singers. And to a certain extent, each instrument, it's hard to imagine uh, a drummer is attempting to emulate a singer, but there's some philosophy there probably that I'm just not familiar with, but perhaps. But vocal lines are really powerful and also really simple, and they're good to know and good to practice. If you have, like, a vocal line you really want to that you really enjoy, learn it on guitar, and then mess around with it, and you might have yourself kind of a lick or a solo, or something like that. So it's I wouldn't say the point of this is to necessarily get better at guitar. It's sticking to one string is reducing the guitar, minimizing the guitar, putting the guitar kind of under a microscope, and it's expounding on your musical ability as opposed to your guitar ability, which I think is equally important, if in the world of soloing, improvising, and just making music in general. You really should have a good grasp of your ear. Your ear should be trained as well as your fingers and your hands, and your guitar skills. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting idea to share. I'm currently advancing through this Advancing Guitarist book, kind of just working on the Unitar thing, trying to get used to it. But it's really cool so far. So yeah, that would be my advice for today. Is listen and reduce yourself. Um, don't, because there can be a lot of creativity to be born um, out of restraint. I think Adam Neely made a good video about this where he talked about restraining himself to a concert where he used um, specifically a Casio. I think it's Casio. I mean, I actually have one literally hanging on the wall over there. A Rat Man. It's just, which is like a terrible old, I guess a synth. It's a tiny little keyboard with like a scratch pad that's terrible, and a drum pad that consists of 3 drum buttons and some really not very good sounds. But he did a whole show with one, and it worked because in the realm of constraint, you're kind of put on the spot, and I find that you're also kind of taken out of your comfort zone. So comfort zones can actually be kind of debilitating in progression, as an artist or as a musician, because you know your comfort zone and it's easy to get stuck there and not grow out of it. And I don't necessarily know how to articulate that any better than that, but it's, you know, and I think for guitarists, one comfort zone is something like the pentatonic box or even a scale, or it just runs up and down the neck, up and down the neck guitar runs. Like something like that is probably been played on my guitar 2 million times. But playing up and down the neck this way is not something that comes up in my playing as much, and I'm trying to focus on it more. And so I think this is also why players like Derek Trucks, slide players in particular, can be so effective in their soloing, is because one, it just has a little bit more of a vocal tone, but also their focus is not on shreddy licks. It's on kind of more melodic licks, because one, it's kind of hard to shred, although Derek Trucks does a great job to shred with a slide, because you're basically reduced to one finger moving up and down, but also you're doing that up and down motion, so your brain is focused on what note is next as opposed to what lick is next. Like I find when I'm soloing and I'm listening to something, it's like, oh, this to this, like a lick that I know will go good here, or some shreddy parts will go good here. It doesn't even necessarily matter what notes are in those shreddy parts. I'm just like gonna shred something, and not really pay attention to the notes that are in. I think that's a mistake, and essentially the takeaway from this entire video, which pay attention to the notes that you're playing. Don't get trapped in the shred trap that guitarists can certainly get trapped in easily, and I am guilty of getting trapped in that. Yeah, it was funny. I sent this guy who I took a lesson with. His name's John Krieger, and he goes. I sent him an improv that I did over a backing track. I think it was Misty, and I'm not really a jazz guitarist. It was just something that I like to play over. There wasn't a lot of jazz licks in there, but there was a lot of lickage, a lot of not necessarily shredding, but some shreddage, some clearly some clear comfort was exposed in that video. I was playing things that I played before and probably replaying things in the actual video itself. So he immediately goes, get this, the advancing guitarist, and just go through it and then try to get used to that Unitar thing and listen more. Listen to your solos. Slow down would be my greatest piece of advice. Is just don't try to rush solos, like, and not even necessarily, well, yeah, definitely don't rush them, but don't get trapped in the shred trap. That's a big thing. I'm just gonna keep re-saying it, but that's kind of the whole video. something I just wanted to highlight because I've been working on it, and I think it's a good thing for guitarists to be aware of, is um, just melodic thinking, and not shred thinking. So I'll leave it at that. New guitar, gonna shout that out. Dan Electro, 59M. I think it's a reissue. I don't know. It's really hard to date these things. I looked it up and they're like, yeah, the serial numbers are really hard to date. I was like, why would you make, as a guitar company, why would you make a serial number that is nonsensical on purpose, or maybe not even on purpose? Like what? Anyway, it looks like it's newer, but it's still really great. I think this series of guitar in particular with like these lipstick pickups is like one of the most underrated guitars ever. Jimmy Page had one. This is the only person I know who I've ever seen play one, but they're great. They sound really good, and I'm really happy with it. Also, it's very colorful, and it looks good and light, so it's pretty. But that's that. It is Thursday. Weekend's coming up soon, so hope everybody has a good weekend, and I will catch you later.